Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another learning event together with Adobe Community Philippines. And this time it's part two of Adobe Photoshop blending modes. Okay, so before we begin, we have another raffle draw this evening. Encouraging everyone to comment down in YouTube. Comment down in YouTube on Adobe Community Philippines. To join our raffle draw, comment down. Hashtag Adobe Photoshop. Once more, comment down to join our raffle draw. Comment down. Hashtag Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so join our parent community, which is Digital Creatives Worldwide. Join our Photoshop community in Facebook. It's Adobe Photoshop Community. Also, again, our parent group is in Facebook. It's Digital Creatives Philippines. And in LinkedIn, it's called Digital Creatives Community. So same with the Photoshop as well. We're also in Photoshop. It's Adobe Photoshop Community in LinkedIn. So once more, we are live. Again, we are live in YouTube. It's Adobe Community Philippines. So to join our raffle draw, comment down. Hashtag Adobe Photoshop. Again, hashtag Adobe Photoshop to join our raffle draw. It's easy to join. Head over to our YouTube channel, Adobe Community Philippines, and in the chat box, type in again hashtag Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so before and lastly, let's give a recognition to our partners who made this possible. Shout out to our friends in Philippine Society of Mechanical Engineers, Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers, United Architects of the Philippines student community. So once more, thank you so much to our partner student organization and schools. So giving you another 5 minutes to register and to inform you. Please do inform your friends to join our second part for Adobe Photoshop learning as we get to learn the technique of blending modes. And okay, I'm now seeing 5 entries for Adobe Photoshop. Yep, join our raffle draw. It's simply commenting down in YouTube, Adobe Community Philippines, hashtag, comment down in the comment section. Like Sir Emerson Binasahan. Ayan, thank you for joining Sir Emerson. Ayan. Hashtag Adobe Photoshop. So again, we now have 5 entries. And of course, we have a lot of things to do. Okay, let me now give the floor to Sir Rusty Resentes. Sir Rusty, take it away, sir.
Hi everyone. Okay. Okay, so good evening from people here staying here in the Philippines. So for the others, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, anywhere you are right now in the world. So let's enjoy the this day too, while we explore again the beauty and the capability of Photoshop in manipulating images and making our images more impactful in terms of using Adobe Photoshop, specifically its blending modes. Okay, so can somebody from our back end um, confirm if my screen is visible and my audio is audible? Okay. So again, welcome to the day two of our understanding blending modes. But before we proceed with our day two, let's have our recapitulation of what we did um, 7 days ago. Basically, our first groups of blending modes in Adobe Photoshop. Again, let's go back with the overview of our discussion. Okay, let me read this one again. This discussion, okay, this webinar aims to provide a clear understanding of blending modes in Photoshop. But of course, let me reiterate this one again. As far as I observe, different um, editing software that we have already embraced this capability of Photoshop. Some editing software already has this capacity to has have this blending modes, but I think it's 88%. I'm 88% sure that this blending modes from other software has the same capability, same capacity with the blending modes in Adobe Photoshop. I think this is very biased, but I still want to say this one, but the industry standard when it comes to editing software, raster images, editing, and Vexel images editing is Adobe Photoshop. So I think this can be it can be considered as one. And features determining how layers interact by mathematically altering the appearance of pixels on the active layer. Sometimes we call this one as the blending layer. Okay. And based on the underlying layers or our base layer. Okay. Enabling participants to use blending modes for combining layers, adjusting colors, and enhancing the visual impact of images and design. Okay, so again, blending modes, we define blending modes as means of taking the pixel of one layer. When we are talking about blending modes, we are always considering two or more, two layers, or one layer and a group of layer group consisting of different layers. Okay, so one layer and blends them with the pixels of another layer to create a new effect. Don't forget that I will always use throughout the remaining day that we have today. The terms blending layers, base layers, active layers, and layers below will always be used throughout this discussion. Okay, so why is it necessary that we understand how blending modes work? It's because it is crucial for creating captivating designs and achieving an artistic excellence with effortless layer blending and color combinations. Okay, so let's not tackle each blending modes that we have last week, but let me give an emphasis again here, the difference between the normal and the pass through. So let me show you this my Photoshop. Okay, so I think later on in our database, no, that you will be able to access this demonstration PSD file will be accessible to everyone of you here, and so that you'll understand the things that I'm telling you right now. Okay, so the same with the last week's example image. We have here this our protagonist zebra. Okay, again, I use this image as a base layer because it emphasizes the color of black and white. Blending modes can be easy to understand by understanding not necessarily the colors, but the behind the colors, the brightness, the contrast. All right. So yeah, so I use this base layer. But also, if you want to explore more with regards to other colors, we have here the other layer. Again, these images, I got this images in Unsplash. So I know some of you here who is very familiar with this website. Again, this website gives us uh, a number of free images that can be used, high definition images that can be used in our editing life. Okay, so we have here the image from Mr. Jeff Griffith. Okay, now we have here the blend layers, but these blend layers are has different way of presenting itself. We have here the blend layers from darkest to the brightest. Again, um, don't be confused. You will hear me most of the time saying that this color is not black, but a different color that has a 0% brightness level. So basically it has no light at all. So we all know that any color, whether it's black, white, yellow, pink, anything on the spectrum, when we remove its brightness level, it will always come up into blackness, and vice versa. When we maximize its brightness level, it will always become a pure white. All right, so this blend layer is a layer that has an increment of 10% brightness level. All right, and the next blend layer we have here is, oh, all right, let me bring it back to normal. All right. So this blend layer has a 50% increment when it comes to its brightness level. The next one here, we have here the um excuse me. I'm sorry for that. We have here a layer, a blend layer that has a brightness level from 0 to 100 in a gradient presentation. All right. So also we have here the RGB spectrum in as a gradient in a linear form. So we can also observe how different colors interact with the image below, with our base layer, when we apply a blending mode on this specific layer. Also, we have here the blend layer, all, or basically the summary of all the blend layers below. Okay, so let's go back again with the presentation. So we have here the normal. So like what I've told you a while ago, let's go back again discussing pass through and normal. The difference between pass through and normal, most of the time, pass through has no effect at all if we're going to compare it with normal mode. Why? Because let's say for example, this is our blend layer, and we have here the base layer below. All right. So again, the base layer that we have here is the zebra, and the blend layer here is this image. Okay, so if we make this one, um, um, let's add another layer here, and let's make it. Let's brush it something like this one. All right. So we have here two layers under the blend layer group. We have here this one, the one that has a purple color. Let's make this one as what color has a difference below? Okay, a linear one. All right. So we have here the first blend layer that has a darken mode. Let's make this one overlay, and let's make the overall blend mode of our blend layer 10% into pass through. What you're going to observe is that each layer inside the group blend layer that has a blending mode of pass through do its purpose, okay, do its work individually. So this layer 1 has a linear light, okay, so this is how linear light blending mode interact with our base layer. And let me hide this one again. And we have here the other layer, the 10% brightness increment, which is in overlay mode. This is how it interacts with our base layer. Okay, considering that both of these layers are in a blend layer group that is in pass through. Meaning, if you are, if let me utilize this one sa mga Filipino nanonood, no? Madaling intindihan kapag pass-through tagos, no? Pag pass-through, yung blend layer ng lahat ng yung blend mode ng kahit anong mga layer sa loob ng grupo na yon tatagos do sa ating base layer sa ibaba. 100 man, no? 100, 200 layers, as long as it is in group or in a set that has a pass-through blending mode, all of its individual capacity, all of its individual modes will be visible in our result. While if we make this blend layer normal, let me show this one. All the, if you're going to observe, our blend modes here individually will not change. This one's still in overlay, and this one's still in linear light. But the group that it has, the blending mode of the group that it is group of is in normal mode. So what does it mean? All of the blending modes capacity of each layer will only happen on all the layers inside the group itself. All right. So if we're going to hide this one, it will not affect. If we're going to hide the base layer, all right, it will not affect the the blending modes, the result or the overall result of our image of our layers. All right, so don't forget that. Actually, I emphasize this one because most of the most of the Photoshop people, all right, let me call them, they are the citizens, they are the locals of the user interface of Adobe Photoshop. Most of them disregard this one. All right, actually, it doesn't affect them on majority of their work. Why? Because on the older versions of Photoshop, pass through blending mode is not um it's not still existing. All right, but still they can still provide a impactful design. But still, since Photoshop gave us this opportunity to have this utilization um, the pass-through blending mode in Photoshop, let's use it properly. All right. So let's go back here. Let me delete this one again. All right. So let's go back the normal pass through. We're already done with that. The dissolve one again. For the dissolve, it will dissolve is a part of a normal group. Okay, dissolve doesn't, if a layer in a if a layer has a blending mode of dissolve and its opacity is 100%, all right, nothing will happen. All right, no opacity, no fill, no contrast brightness, anything, nothing will happen on that layer unless we change its opacity. So let me change the opacity of our blend layer that has a dissolve blending mode into a 46%. It reduces the opacity of our blending layer in a sense that it makes no in the statistics we could call this one standard deviation. All right, so if you are familiar in mathematics and statistics, the standard deviation is the distance between each data. All right, so we can say that the solve layer, let me bring this overlay mode into normal again. Still nothing happens. All right, so if we use dissolve, the more we decrease the opacity of the layer that is in dissolve mode, blending mode, the more the distance between the particles of the blending layer increases. Uh, in statistics, what do we call in that variation? We call it inverse variation. As one variable increases, the other variable decreases. So in our case, as our opacity decreases, and vice versa, okay? As our opacity decreases, the distance between um, uh, the opacity of our layer decreases in the sense that the distance between the particles increases. All right. So let's not make it that more um, hard in a harder way. And now we have here the darkened group. Simply, again, the darkened group blending mode is composed of the following blending mode. We have here the darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, and darker color. All of them only makes our image darker. Okay, don't you ever forget this one. Every time we use a blending mode under a darkened group, we are expecting our result image to be darker. All right? It's not about the blending layer, it's not about the base layer. It's about the result, the overall result of the image. When we make a image, a blending layer of our layer, simply a layer in Photoshop, in a darken mode or any blending mode under a darken group, we always expect the result to be darker. All right. So no matter what blending mode we're going to use here, what you always observe is that the dark areas of our blending layers retains only the brightness level, only the contrast level interchange. While when you use any blending mode under the lighten group, we always expect the result image to be lighter, or should I say brighter. All right. So any part of our blending layer that is in white or that has a brighter or has a greater brightness level, it retains. While as it lessens its brightness level, the the result image, the black parts or the black areas of our or the dark areas of our blend layers become more transparent or invisible. All right. Now, when it comes to overlay, it combines the capacity of our multiply and screen. Okay. What this the only thing that we need to understand when we use overlay. Um, the more uh the more you have the more the brightness level of the area of our blending layer nears the median or the median, uh should I say the pure gray or 50% white or 50% dark, it becomes transparent. Well, the white parts, it becomes more brighter. Okay, the more the brightness level increases. On the other hand, the the dark areas of our blend layers become more darker. All right. So the area that becomes transparent are the gray ones if we use the overlay section. And the other it is the same with the other um blending mode in this group. Now let's proceed with the part two of our, that's actually the review. All right. So let's start with in your computers. Okay, so if you're still not able to um, access this demonstration Photoshop file, you can open your Adobe Photoshop and open any kind of image that you have there in your personal computers, and just create a gradient layer that has that is in linear. You can go with the discussion. Let's start with the difference blending mode. Looks at the color information in each channel and subtract either the blend color from the base color or the base color from the blend layer, depending on which has the greater brightness value. Okay, let's go back here first in Adobe Photoshop. Let's utilize this blend layer 10%. Okay, let's make this one. Let's make sure that our layer is in normal mode. All right, this one is in normal mode. Okay, and our blend layer, let's make it difference. Okay, the first things first, before we proceed with this one, there are things we need to consider first. Okay, we need to know um we need to know which has the greater brightness value. Okay, so we have here the blend layer and we have here the base layer. In our blend layer, let's make this one in normal. Let's bring it to normal. This part of our blend layer has the greatest brightness value. How do I say so? How do I know? Without looking at the image, we can say that this one has the brightest value, no matter what color this gradient is. All right. Again, any color, if we make the brightness level into 100%, it will always become white. Okay, so in this blend layer, this area here, okay, this area here, can we create a new layer? Okay, so this area here is um the part of the blend layer that has the brightest value. And if we compare this blend layer on this area of the image of our base layer, what will happen? Based on the definition, it subtract the value. It subtract the image. All right. After we distinguish which has the brightest value, it subtract the brightness level of that value. Now, what will happen with white? Okay, no matter if it is in blending layer or if it is in base layer, as long as it is white, what will happen with our result image is that white inverts the base color values. Okay, so in our image here, in our blend layer here, this is white. All right, this is white. We are expecting that if we make this layer in difference, all right, it will invert an image. Let me show you how this layer will look like if we invert this one. Let me invert this layer, Control J, and let's merge this group. And yeah, so this layer, let's make it inverse or invert. Actually it is in I think this in image filter. This is how it will look like if we invert the image. All right. Now, we are expecting that this area of the image will remain if we make this blend layer into invert, because this layer has the brightest value. Okay. So let's make this one in invert. I mean in difference. Can you see it? It remains. All right. So let me bring this one. So the more our image become whiter, our blend is, sorry. pardon for the term, the more the image become whiter, become nearest to the has the brightest value, the more it inverts the base layer, or the base part of our base layer. Okay, while of course, as you observe in the image, the more it lessens the brightness value, it becomes 0%, it becomes more transparent. As a result, it shows our, it 100%, 800% show our base layer. Okay, so again, this is our, we are in difference blending mode. This layer of our image, of our blend layer, has a 0% brightness level. Okay, so it becomes transparent afterwards. All right, so that is in difference. And it just it just subtract the white part, it inverts. The black parts, nothing happens, it becomes transparent. All right, so in summary, this is what will happen with our image. Again, the more it becomes 0% in brightness level, the more it becomes transparent. It will always show the layer below. While the more it becomes white, the more it inverts the base. Okay, that's the better way to understand that. In difference blending mode, the more the brightness level, we're talking about the blending layer, all right? The more the brightness level of our blending layer becomes 0%, the more it becomes transparent, making the result image, making the base layer visible, all right? On the other hand, we're still talking about the blending layer. The more the brightness level of the blending layer, all right, increases to the point that it becomes 100% brightness level, the more it becomes opaque, and at the same time, it inverts the the part of the image below, or our base layer, or the base image. Hope you understand that. Okay, so let's proceed. Let's go further. Exclusion creates an effect similar to but lower in contrast than the difference mode. Blending with white inverts the base color values. Again, blending layers that with white inverts the base color values. This is the same with the difference blending mode. Blending with black produce no change. Okay, so we are expecting, what did it tell us again? Effect similar to but lower in contrast. Again, lower in contrast. So we are expecting that if we change the blending mode of this layer from difference into exclusion, still these areas, this area will still become transparent. Well, this one it inverts, but it becomes more subtle. All right, so let's change the blending mode of this blend layer 10% increment into exclusion. Can you see it again? Can you see it? What we will observe is that still the 0% brightness level of the blend layer becomes transparent. So in base layer, nothing happens. The 100% brightness level of our blending layer becomes more opaque, and at the same time, it inverts the base layer. But it has a lower contrast, making the gray areas of our blend layer more visible. So if you're going to observe on this one, the 50% brightness level, the 50%, the 50% brightness level generally becomes more visible in our area. All right. If you're going to see the overall result here, what we will observe, let's go back to Photoshop. We have it here. So let's change from pass through. Let me double check if it all has its normal mode. All right, so it's all of the layers inside the blender all is in normal mode. Let's change it into, what was that again? Exclusion. The 0% brightness level, transparent. The 100% brightness level, opaque. And invert and inverse. But The gray areas become visible because the contrast level um, becomes lower or becomes subtle. Okay? In Filipino slang term, we will understand this one. The difference is OA. Exclusion, hindi naman siya OA. Tama lang. All right. Hope you understand that I hope you understand that Filipino audience. All right. So let's proceed with the next one. After exclusion, we have here subtract. All right. Looks at the color information in each channel and subtract the blend color from the base color. In 8 and 16-bit images, any resulting negative values are clipped to zeros. Okay, so it has a different discussion when it comes to channels, but it only tells us that we have to look on a specific area of our UI in our Photoshop. All right, so if we make the workspace in, can we make it to the essentials? All right, so I bring back uh the workspace into its default. Okay, we have here the channels. All right, so we have the RGB, the red, green, and blue. So what does channels do is that it separates each layers. By the way, let's bring it back to normal. All right, so here, if we enable RGB, we all know that our image is composed of, if the image is in RGB mode, it is always comprises of red, greens, and blues. All right. So there are videos and YouTube that will show us that all images are can be formed by only combining the different brightness level, hue level, saturation level of red, greens, and blues. What channels does in Photoshop is that it separates the red, green, and blues in our image. Okay, so right now what is enabled is the RGB mode, meaning all the reds, all the greens, all the blues in our layer, in our image is visible. So that's the real image. All right. So if enable red, what you can see right now in our result image are all the reds in our image, but it is presented in a way as black and white because of one and zeros in terms of brightness level. Again, in Photoshop, when you say white, when you say one, it's opaque. If it is in zero, it is invisible. All right. So all ones here are the reds, but it changes on its brightness level. The same with greens and blues. If you're going to observe, let's take a look at this one. Where's the RGB? All right. So okay. So we are expecting that if we enabled red here, what will happen is that these areas will become white. Meaning, this area, we can conclude that this area of the image has reds, while this area of our image has no reds. How do I say so? Because it is in zero, it is in black. If we layer mask, we're doing layer mask, okay, we make the layer mask black if we make the specific part of the image invisible. All right, so let's check. We are expecting that this area is red, right? So correct. This area of the image has the red ones. Okay? And so on and so forth. All right. So if we make this one into subtract, am I right? I'm still, yeah. If we make this subtract, um, on each channel, it subtracts the blend color from the base color. Okay. If we use subtract, what the algorithm of Photoshop do is that it go here in channels. All right. So all all reds here subtract the color on the base layer. Okay. So this part of the image of red, it subtract. Let's choose a specific area. So you can be able to understand this one. I know this is very difficult for us, but let's try to understand this in a simpler way. Okay, let's highlight this area. Can we use the white ones, or this one that has Mhm. The one that has this black, white, and brown and blue areas. All right. So again, let's just focus on this part of the area. What color of our blend layer do we have here? We have here a part of the gradient of blue, right? And we will subtract it here on these specific areas here. So the result image will be this one. All right. So we are expecting that if we subtract the image here, okay, the better way to understand that is that it subtract the image. Each color in the color spectrum has its own value, right? So if we're going to subtract it from the other color, it produces another color. That's what happens here, but it is just a collection of pixels. All right. What we can only understand, what we can only confirm here is that images, any resulting negative values are clipped to zero. It becomes black. Okay, so these areas here that has black, all right, the part that this area that has black also, this one and this one, I'm painting the base layer. Okay, this area, and these areas that has black, we can assure that the value here is in negative. Why? Because it's in black. Okay, it's the same with this one. The base layer here, all right, the base layer here as a black color. So we can conclude that the brightness level of this color is 0, right? Any number, 0 minus any number, it will always produce in a number line, it produce an answer of negative number, right? 0 minus negative, um, 0 minus 5, negative 5. 0 minus 11, negative 11. If we use a subtract blending mode, any negative, or if it is in 0, of course, if it is in 0, it becomes black. And if it's in negative, it will always produce black, because we cannot comprehend, all right, we cannot comprehend a value of color that has a negative, all right? Negative integer is a negative integer itself. Yeah, it's still. Okay, so in colors, we cannot say it's in negative. The brightness level of your blue, the brightness level of that red is -7. There's no such thing. All right. The brightness level of that green is -21. It will always show a 0. It will always show a black color. We can say that it's a -1,000,000, but the result of it will always be black. Hope you understand that. Okay, so if we subtract the blend layer to the base layer, if the base layer to the blend layer, if the answer is in negative or if it is equal to 0, the resulting image will always be black. All right, control 0, and let's proceed with the next one, the divide. Okay, again, let's do the math. Any number, okay, let's see, let's use the sign. In multiplication, it has the same rule with the division. Negative times negative, the answer will always be positive, right? While the positive times positive is still is positive. While negative times positive, the answer will always be negative, both in multiplication and division. In divide blending mode, Photoshop looks at the color information in each channel, all right, and divides the blend color. Again, the blend color is the color at the top, from the base color. So meaning the base color divided by the blending color. But we are pertaining the color here by looking at the channel. All right, let's see what will happen in our image here if we make this one in divide. If you're going to observe, we cannot use any blending mode because it is still hidden. All right, so if ever you encounter this one, always make sure if we are blending layers, we are always expecting that the visible layer, okay, is two or more, and the layer that we are putting the blending mode is always visible. All right, so the blend layer that has a 10% increment, a while ago we make it exclusion. Let's make it in divide. What happens here is that if we're going to observe again, um huh, the label, okay, the label becomes invisible. Why? Can you let's observe this one. The blend layer, the percent labels, the labels here above, all right, is in color white. Okay, if it is in color white, it will become transparent, it will become invisible, it will make it divide, because 0 times 1, okay, the brightness level of the labels is 1 because it is in white, times 0, it is black, it becomes negative, it becomes 0. All right, so it becomes transparent. The same here, the areas here, let's use this one. When it was in normal mode, the brightest level here is 0%. Okay, when we change it to divide, it becomes it becomes opaque, but in invert, okay, in inverse. While here, the one that has the 100% brightness level, it becomes transparent. Divide. It becomes transparent. What blending mode is the is a direct inverse of this one. As far as I remember, that is no, 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 no. Yeah. Okay. Difference and divide. We can say that difference and divide is directly inverted. In difference, the more it becomes 0, it becomes transparent. The more it becomes 100% brightest level, it becomes opaque, at the same time inverted. While in divide, the more the brightness level of our blend layer is 0% or no light at all, it becomes transparent, but it is inverted. What's the inverse of black? The inverse of the total black is basically the total white, right? So here, the total black areas of our blend layers becomes white. While this one, it becomes transparent. Nothing happens here. Okay? So let's proceed with the next four. I know the blending modes of most of the time when we use blending modes, we're just using the basic four: the multiply, screen, overlay. All right. If the result is not if we did not meet the result, okay, the expectation, if our expectation doesn't meet the result of our image by using those four, we tend to use the trial and errors of the blending modes. But still, it is necessary that we understand what happens behind, what happens during the algorithm of Photoshop. All right. So we have here the U. Okay, so we are now jumping to the last group of our blending modes. This is the last four. the hue, saturation, color, and luminosity. All right. So for you, and for me, all right. So we're talking about hue, HUE. We're talking about the color. It creates a result color with the luminance and saturation of the base color and the hue of the blend color. Okay. I think this is not is incomplete. Creates a result color with the luminance and saturation of the base color. Let's I think that's not given properly. So let's just observe what happens if we make this layer. Let me delete this one. If we make this layer in U, all right. Does the brightness level increases? Nothing happens. What we can say, what we can observe here is that any part of the image that has that has a blending, it becomes unsaturated. It lowers the saturation level. Let's see what will happen if we lower the saturation level of the base layer. We should be expecting that this layer uh, will has the same value in these areas. All right. So let me duplicate the base layer and convert it into a specific image. All right. And let's change its saturation level into 0%. How can we do that? Let's change this one to smart object. And then let's go to filter. Am I right? Let's make adjustments. Okay. Again, we're doing it on the image itself. We're not using, okay, we're not using an adjustment layer here. Let's use and saturation. Let's lower the saturation level to 0% or the negative 100%. And let's press OK. And let's make the blend layer visible. All right. That's really what happens. Okay. We don't understand the definition. Let's change the definition. Okay. Basically, what happens here is that if there is a blending happens, okay, all the areas that intersect that have okay, all the areas that has blending, the result is negative 100 saturation level in the base layer. Will that work? Because that is what happened, right? We make this one into U. If we use U, it is in U. Now, our base layer, we change the saturation level of our base layer into a 0%, or basically in Photoshop, it's negative 100. All right? It becomes this image. Now, if we unhide this layer that has in U, nothing happens. Because the blend layer here is visible. All right? The blend layer here is visible. The blend layer here is not hidden, but still it gives us a result that it's invisible because the same thing happens between the blend layer and the base layer. Hope you understand that in the simplest way. Because me myself, I don't understand the definition that's written on our material. But yeah, it works though. In saturation, if we use saturation as a blending mode, it creates a result color with the luminance and hue of the base color and the saturation of the blend color. What happens here? Painting with this mode in an area with no saturation or basically gray causes no change. I think the other way around happens here. Let's see what happened. Okay, we're still here. Let's hide first let's bring it to normal again. Let's hide first our filter here, our adjustment here. Again, the adjustment that we did is the adjustment on the image itself, the adjustment, the hue and saturation adjustment on the layer itself, but it produces another layer here because we convert the image before we convert the image into a smart object before we change its hue and saturation. Okay, now it is in normal mode. The saturation, hue and saturation is hidden. All right. And let's make our blend layer visible and change it into saturation. All right. What happened here? Let's bring up again the hue in saturation. That's the same, right? Still the same. So we can conclude, if we use hue and saturation in whites and blacks, if the all the colors whites and all the colors blacks in our blending layer, in our blending and base layer, will produce the same results if we go into hue and saturation. Let's change our blend layer into the gradient one. Let's bring this one again into a normal mode, the RGB one visible, and change it to saturation. All right. This is what happened. Okay. What we can observe here is that the blue ones on our image, all right. Mhm. I think what happens here is that it it increases the saturation level of our base layer. Again, this is our base layer here. It increases the saturation level of the image depending on the brightness level of our blending layer. Okay, so what happens here is that the saturation level is being affected. As a result, it produces an image that has a very high saturation. If you're going to observe here, this area of the image is in blue gradient, right? Let's bring up again this sketch. Okay. This area here is in blue. Let's bring out our blend layer RGB gradient. Yeah, it increases the saturation level. I'm very sure that this increases the saturation level. Okay. So what happened is that the saturation level of the base layer increases depending on the brightest level of the color on our blending layer. But of course, it still considers what color is that. Because if you're going to observe here, the area that becomes yellowish are the white ones. Meaning, the white ones which are visible, it intensifies the saturation level of the color here. All right? Hope you understand this one. So basically, in saturation, what's being the main protagonist here is a saturation level. All right. Let's bring it back again to normal and hide it. Now let's proceed with. Will that be the last? No, that is the second to the last. Color. All right. Is that correct? Wait. Um, Let me double check that again. So we have here the RGB gradient. Okay, that's correct. I was afraid because what happened here, because it will produce a different result if we change this one into another blending mode. All right, let's change. Okay, and let's change this one into saturation, and let's change this one into over. Okay, still the same. No matter what blending mode our layer here. That's why it's very important that you consider first all the blending modes of your each layer inside the group before you change the overall blending mode of the group itself. All right. It will. I know this will be a very hard challenge if your layers is already as high as the Pyramid of Giza. Let's give more effort with that. Let's proceed with color. Okay, what happens if if we use color as our blending mode? If you use color blending mode, it creates a result color with the luminance of the base color and the hue and saturation of the blend color. So uh what is what we're talking about here is that the not only the hue and saturation of the blend color, but also its luminance. You say luminance, it's the amount of brightness in a color. This preserves the gray levels in the image and is useful for coloring monochrome image and for tinting color images. Let's see what will happen here. Let's try it first in black and whites. All right. So we have here the black and whites. Again, it is incrementing by 10% brightness level. Let's make this one in color. All right. If it is in black and white, all right. If it is in black and white, nothing happens, but simply decreasing its saturation level or making the saturation level in 0%. But if it is in, let me bring it back to normal again, in RGB, or if it has a color itself, and make it to color, this is what happened. Actually, I think if you're going to compare the blend layer color to saturation, the saturation level in color is not so intense when it comes to blending to the base layer. Let's observe. Here it is in color mode. Now it is in saturation mode. In saturation mode, the intensity of the saturation level is too much, making the colors of the result color becomes more intense. While in color, we can still see it becomes more subtle, right? We can still see the difference or the transitions between the reds to greens, greens to blue. All right. But on the other hand, it affects the luminance and the color itself of the layer below. Again, if we are in color, the part here, can you see this one? This part of the image, this part that has a white area in our base layer, it changes in color. Let me bring it back again. Can you see that? It becomes a transition between orange, yellow, and green. But it is not the same with, actually, the same happens if we use saturation mode, right? But if you're going to observe here, the saturation level is too much, making the layer very intense. All right. So we can say that the color mode here, the color mode, the color modes, the color mode in Photoshop in blending mode makes the result image to have the base layer to be colorized, but the saturation level is not too intense. Okay, so that's why the definition here is very accurate, because it says that it is useful for coloring monochrome images. Okay, so if you are into retouching, reviving old images, transforming a monochrome images, black and white images to a colorized one, color blending mode is a very good or safe haven for you guys. Okay, I hope it works. Let's proceed with the last one. We have here the luminosity. We are expecting here that the protagonist on this blending mode is simply the luminance or the luminosity level of the image. Creates a result color with the hue and saturation. Still, the hue and saturation of the result image is different. All right, of the base color and the luminance of the blend color. All right, so meaning we are taking the hue and saturation of our base color. Okay, we are talking about the base layer. we are eliminating the UN saturation of our base layer and comparing it to the luminance level of our blending layer. This mode creates the inverse effect of color mode. Let's see what will happen. It tells us it tells us the definition of the inverse. All right. So let's see what will happen here. Let me delete this one. So right now, the our blend layer, which is in RGB gradient, okay, it is in color mode. All right. Let's make this one as an original image. Shift Control E. All right. So we have here the image, a single image, a raster image, a combination of this one. So if we hide this one, these two layers, still the visible part is the one that we the merge, the outcome. Okay. Now let's invert this one. Control I for invert. This is what will happen. So this is our expectation. All right. This is our expectation if we make this layer from color into luminosity. Let's see what will happen. All right, it's this different thing happens. Now, why is it so? Let's see if we invert this one. Hmm. All right. Oh, sorry. Shift Control E. Let's change it. All right. Let's see the definition again. So we're talking about the base color, okay? The UN saturation of the base color and the luminance of our blend color. Now, what happens with after we eliminate those? So basically, this mode creates the inverse effect of the color mode. But as we can see, that is not what happened. Anyway, where's our base layer? Let's see what will happen. Let's use this blend layer. Let's change this one into luminosity. Now, what we can observe here is that the 0% brightness level, it is opaque. The 0%, the 100% brightness level, it is opaque. The 50% brightness level, it is somehow the between, I think this is about I think the opacity of this one is about 80% to 90%. And after that, what happens below is that the inverted one? So let me check first. All right. That's what happened in 10%. If it is in 50% and the luminosity changes. All right. The opacity of the brightness level between 0 and 100% is lowered. Okay, it decreases. But aside from it decreases, it also affects the UN saturation of the base layer. Again, the base layer is the zebra. Okay, that's what happened. All the black areas in our image and all the white areas on our blend layers, it retains. Okay, so let me make this. Let's make it this one. All the 0% brightness level on our blend layer and all of the 100% brightness level of our blend layer, it retains. Meaning all the dark areas and all the brightest areas of our blend layers, it remains. All right. While all the um, brightness level between us as um 50%, okay, 50% brightness level, it changes its opacity. It lowers the opacity by almost 80% to 90%. And at the same time, it affects the hue and saturation of our base layer, resulting on this one. I cannot give you an application for this one. I don't know what application we can use this, but I think we can use this in specific design like retro. All right, retro images, vintage images. We all know that old photos has this effect. Okay, yeah. So I think that is clear for that last part of our blend layer. So basically, this is the result. All right, all the black, all the whites, all the 0%, all the 100% brightness level, it retains. But um, as the brightness level nearest the half or the 50%, it lowers the opacity by almost 80 to 90%, and it affects the hue and saturation of the image. All right. So it ends all the 27 blending modes in Adobe Photoshop as of now, 2023, because we don't know what will happen in the near future. Okay, so we don't know how the algorithm of Adobe Photoshop work, and of course um, the the continuous advancement in technology also means that we can still learn more about colors. All right, so maybe Photoshop, of course, Photoshop will always adapt, Adobe will always adapt with that, and we are expecting more blending modes. All right, that's what Adobe Photoshop is promising to us. The old ones retains. What we're always expecting is the additionals. All right. So I think that's end our discussion, or and hope we achieve the objective on this discussion, understanding blending modes in Photoshop. Again, I am Rusty Decentes, and thank you so much. Can I call Sir Jomar? Hi, Ma'am Mary. You are muted, ma'am.
Maybe you've heard about Adobe's Creative Cloud, but you're still not completely sure what it is. Simply put, it's a whole new way of working and creating, giving you everything you need to do your best work. When you join Creative Cloud, you get all the same state-of-the-art creative tools you've always used and loved. Tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Premiere Pro, but they've been completely reinvented to support a more intuitive and connected way of creating. Plus, you have access to brand new tools like Adobe Muse and Edge tools and services for building beautiful modern websites. With one membership, you get every Adobe creative tool so you can constantly experiment and expand your skills. And the very latest features are always available to you when you're ready to download and install them. Creative Cloud lets you work from anywhere, on any device, wherever you are and with anyone you want. You can sync your files to the cloud to work on them later, access them from another device, or share your files and collaborate with a team. In fact, Creative Cloud was specifically designed to streamline the way creatives work together. You can set up private folders, choose your collaborators, manage versions, and capture all the activity related to your projects, all in one place. And with the integration of Behance, the world's leading creative community, you can showcase your work to millions, get feedback, and get exposure. From right within Photoshop CC, you can post your designs to your Works in Progress portfolio on Behance, and then get instant feedback from your trusted peers. You can also explore and discover the world's best work from leading creatives, peers, and people you know. Behance ProSite is also included with your membership. It's a fully customizable professional online portfolio on your own URL. With ProSite, keeping your portfolio up to date becomes easier than ever. You can also build and publish websites, mobile apps, and iPad applications. It's all included in your membership. Download the creative apps from the cloud to your desktop and use them the same way you always have, whether you're connected to the internet or not. You have a central dashboard to help you keep track of your entire creative universe. Your ideas, files, fonts, colors, settings, and updates and upgrades to your desktop apps, as well as your collaborators and community activity. And you have access to a growing library of tutorials and inspirational content. It's all available in real time wherever you happen to be. Creative Cloud evolves as you evolve and gives you everything you need to keep up, so you can experiment, innovate, and embrace whatever's next. Create now.